Hi, everybody. Welcome to February's OARC monthly talk event. We're going to try and do these every month through 2026, or as long as I can keep finding people who are willing to do it and show up. Speaking of people showing up this evening is Tom Wardill, Mike 9 Tango Whiskey Mike, who is, I think, still the current RSGB Mega Champion, Tom.
I am indeed.
Excellent. And one of the many things that Tom is interested in is 3D printing, particularly for amateur radio and things like that. So Tom's going to give us a brief overview of what can be done and how to get into it and all of that kind of stuff. We'll do some Q&A at the end, and hopefully we'll finish nice and early in time for people who want to move over to this evening's pub. So, without further ado, with his talk, Making Robots Make Tools, I'm going to hand over to Tom Will.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. So this talk's intended to be a bit of an introduction to what is 3D printing, what are the types of 3D printing that you might come across, how it might be useful to you as an amateur radio enthusiast, and what you might expect and what you should look for if you're looking to buy your first printer, to get some prints made, to have some understanding of what the tools can produce and what you can do with them. So yeah, I like to refer to mine as the robot friends. So making robots make tools, because that's how I view them in terms of they are a tool and a hobby enhancer. They will help you do things. They can be a hobby in themselves, but as somebody who has a lot of hobbies, or as somebody who is purely interested in amateur radio, then these tool these tools can help you in a way that you might not necessarily expect. So with that, let's get started. So what is 3D printing? It's otherwise known, or its professional name is additive manufacturing, in that you are actually adding material to more material. Sort of the traditional machining methods are known as subtractive manufacturing. You start with a block and you remove everything from the block that you don't want. In additive, you start with the raw material and build the thing that you want from that. There's lots of things that come under the title of 3D printing. There's anything from nanoscale organics to printing giant concrete buildings. And the general concept of it is that it is taking a 3D design, reducing it to essentially 2D layers, and then stacking those layers on top of each other until you get the object you want. There's a bunch of work going on at the minute to make that different, but currently they're all still fairly similar. And yeah, there's a bunch of materials, there's a bunch of different sizes, there's a bunch of different techniques. So, types of 3D printing. These are the three that you will come across most often, sort of in order of uh, most common to less so. FDM is what a lot of people would consider to be 3D printing now. If you asked a person in the street who would otherwise not know much, fuse deposition modeling. Basically, you stick melted plastic together with heat. And then SLA is increasingly common and accessible for home users, but comes with some warnings that I'll talk about next. But it's basically stick resin together with UV light. So you shine the image of the UV of the layer into a vat of UV resin, and gradually it all sticks together and builds a thing. And then SLS, I don't know anybody who has one of these at home. Sort of, you will start at £15,000 and go upwards, as far as I'm aware. But they are generally, you do come across them. It's sticking metal together with lasers. You start with a metallic powder and use heat formed lasers to build the next layer and then re-add powder. There is a bunch of crossovers between those SLS and SLIE, particularly you can SLS print with nylon rather than metal. That's again becoming increasingly common, but I, I certainly don't know of anyone who owns one. If you do own an SLS machine, please get in touch. I have ideas. But so a word about SLA printing or resin printing or UV resin printing as it's known. I'm not going to particularly cover it in this talk. It is accessible for the home user. The machines are generally between 200 to £1,000 now, unless you're buying professional grade ones. But you should definitely exercise caution and be prepared for things that come with them. The resin is toxic, even the ones they claim are water washable. That doesn't mean they're not toxic. It just means that you can wash the final print with water rather than isopropyl alcohol. They are really good for very fine detail. If you play Warhammer or tabletop games or things like that, you've probably come across SLA printed materials now. They're really good for artistic, non-structural, organic shapes. The level of quality and detail you can get out them is amazing. But they absolutely need venting outdoors. You can't use them indoors without proper precautions. Do your research before you look at them. But they are really good fun. I do own one. And yeah, particularly if you do tabletop games. Absolutely brilliant. So FDM printing, as I've just said, it's the most common form of 3D printing. This tends to be what most people think of. Roughly, you feed solid plastic in at the top. It melts the plastic and a head moves around and deposits the melted plastic in a layer, and then everything moves either up or down, depending on which printer you've got, and continues building up that way. This, it's basically a hot glue gun attached to a robot. And with that comes with a lot of options, a lot of varieties. And one of the things that I would say, particularly if you're looking at getting into 3D printing or looking to buy your first printer, is decide what you would like from this. If you're interested in the mechanics of printing itself, and you're interested in having your hobby or one of your hobbies to be 3D printers and 3D printing, that's absolutely fine. But that will have different choices from if you want something that you can roughly push a button and get a part out of, you will make different choices about what you buy, how you use it. I've kind of done both over my time. I generally have at least one printer in parts lying around. But if I just want a new knob for my radio or a new stand or a new rack or anything like that, then they tend not to be the printers that I go for, usually because they're in parts and they don't work. And many options for filament, which we'll cover briefly. And it's best for functional parts. You can absolutely get decorative and artistic parts out of an FDM printer, but their strong aim is basically things that look like boxes. They're much stronger in that field than they are in anything that requires high detail, although that is changing. And it's also known as rapid prototyping, the concept of you can build something in CAD and hit print and 2 hours later have a part in your hand. They're rapid and they're brilliant for that sort of thing. One-off parts and one-off prototypes. So if you want to get into 3D printing, if you want to own a 3D printer, what do you need? So firstly, you'll need a model. This is what people refer to as the thing that you want to make, be it a 3D design, one you've downloaded, one you've designed yourself. You'll need it in a certain format so that you can print it, but most things support the formats now. You'll need a slicer, which is a piece of software that takes the model and chops it up into the layers that I talked about earlier. Obviously, you'll need a printer. You don't necessarily need a printer. There are printing services that will do it for you. There are people who will print things for you if you ask them nicely. Some libraries, a lot of hackspaces, printers are accessible. You don't need to own one, but you will, for values of need, you will need to own a printer, and you'll need a filament, which is the thing that you're going to make it with. As illustrated by a roll of plastic filament. Not all of them are plastic, not all of them come on nice rolls, but generally you need to decide what you want to make your model out of. I'll come back to that in a bit. So where do you get your model? You want a thing. Where do you get it? There are some sites online. Printables, Thingiverse are two big ones. Printables is owned by Prusa, who make printers. Thingiverse, I believe, or at one point was owned by MakerBot, who also make printers. They are big libraries of models. Thingiverse is a bit bigger, but older and quite frankly not as nice to use. It's a little bit clunky. Printables is nice. There's a bunch of models, designs. Yeah, they generally these days I will use Printables over Thingiverse, but whatever works. Cults 3D is good for particularly commercial models. People design things that you can buy for money. It's quite strongly weighted towards tabletop miniatures and things, but there are other things in there. Props, yeah, miniatures, things that are more than just somebody had a need and designed a widget to do something. And obviously Google, or your search engine of choice. Put thing plus 3D print or 3D print model or something into Google or a search engine, you'll find things. These days, pretty good track record of finding random things that I need. My shower door fell off the other day. Turns out you can't buy the hinge, but somebody on a plumber's talk forum had designed a model that I just printed, and now I have a shower door again, which is nice. And on the other side of this slide, we've got a suggestion if you want to make your own things, if you have specific needs, you want to print a stand for a specific radio, or the stand needs to be certain dimensions, or whatever you need. FreeCAD is free. It's in the name. It's free in both senses, monetarily and license-wise. Fusion 360 is good. They do I can't remember what they call it now, a hobbyist license I think that's free up to a certain amount. And there's a whole load of tutorials and things on YouTube, and you can buy books and courses and all sorts. It's generally a full CAD program. SolidWorks users, please don't shout at me about that. Onshape is nice. It's only runs in a web browser, but that means it runs on anything. So Windows, Linux, Mac, low power laptop, high power desktop, pretty much works everywhere. It is free to use as long as you don't mind your models being public. If you design them on Onshape, there is a public search for them and people can find them. For most of the stuff that I design, That's fine. I don't care. I use Onshape for that. And again, there's a bunch of tutorials and things. OpenSCAD is, or SCAD, I'm not sure how you pronounce that one. That one is programmatic 3D design, which is really interesting if you want to do what are known as parametric parts, where you can put in variables for dimensions and change them quickly. So if you decide that your thing needs to be 42.3 millimeters rather than 42.1 millimeters, it's easy to change it. FreeCAD Fusion, Onshape will all do the same. But OpenSCAD is interesting. I never got my head around it, but I know a bunch of people who do. They seem to get on with it really well. It doesn't work for me. And Blender. Blender is free, again, open source. My headphones have just run out of battery, so please wait while I just quickly change speakers. So yeah, Blender is free, open source as well, and is pro-grade animation and sort of organic modeling. It's less good at functional CAD, what you would consider to be traditional CAD-based design, but Blender is good for miniatures, organic shapes, things like that. You can absolutely use it to do CAD designs, and people do, but it's not really intended for that. Okay. Yeah, I will say design isn't as hard as you'd think. And there are a lot of resources for how to do designs and models, and it's quite easy to learn to go from I've made a small square box to making more complicated things. It's not as hard as you'd think. If you haven't done it yet, definitely have a go at it. Moving on. What is a slicer? So I touched on this quickly. 3D printing is layers. It takes a 3D model, slices each layer at a given height, turns that into a 2D image, basically, if you're doing resin printing, or in the case of FDM printing, it turns it into what's known as G-code generally. Most printers run on G-code, not all, but most, which is the set of instructions for the 3D printer to say, move here, move this bit here, extrude this amount of plastic, move here, move here, move here, etc. This is pretty simple and pretty well solved these days. The big ones, bamboo slicer, but is intended for bamboo printers, which we'll come to in a minute. Orca slicer, which is a more generic open source one. Prusa slicer, which is aimed at Prusa printers. Those three are all forks of each other. They're all open source, and they're all so they're all roughly interchangeable with some UI quirks on different things. There are others. Creality have their own. There's a couple of older open source ones. The industry and the hobby seems to have standardized on Prusa, Orca, bamboo, with a special mention for Cura for some people. Cura's a bit older. I personally use a mix of bamboo and Orca, depending on which printer I'm using, but it's a bit. And yeah, sort of as I've been going through these, the pictures in the corner of things that I've printed and things that I use. This one, OARC will appreciate, is a PCB holder for soldering with a Nino TNC PCB on it. If I can make this work, we've got a quick demo. I'll use Bamboo Slicer for this, but because I can do the searching and things in there, but the same things apply for Orca and any of the other slicers, really. So let's see if I can make this screen share work quickly. I still have too many windows open. Let's go with this one. Did that work?
No, we just have a black.
Yeah, that's what I've got as well. Okay, let let me poke it again and let's see if this doesn't work. I will just move on.
Obviously, I won't leave this when I chop this down.
Yeah, nah. Okay, I will come. I will go back to sharing the presentation and we'll move on. There we go.
If you want to afterwards, Tom, we can record something if it'll work and I can graft it in.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Now it won't share anything at all. Okay, I'm just gonna hit stop and then start again and we'll
Yeah,
see.
why don't you try sharing the slicer from scratch and
Yeah,
see if that works?
yeah.
I'm
That.
afraid not, Tom.
Oh no. Oh no, no. Oh dear. I practice this and everything. Okay. How do I turn that
I
off?
can fill. Do 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 do
Yeah,
do.
please
Do,
insert
do,
elevator music while I find with this.
do.
Okay. Nope. Okay, now
I
nothing.
wonder if it's a permissions thing or something like that. I don't know if it's because it's in the browser or whatnot.
Okay, now
Uh,
Zoom has completely crashed, although I can still hear you, so that's good.
Interesting. I mean, if you want to quit and come back,
Yeah, I'll
obviously
do
that's
that.
not a problem. Um, uh, Hello, Robin. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
absolutely
I'll
fine,
be
Tom.
back
Take your
in
time.
2 seconds.
I guess we're
No
having a
worries.
short interlude.
We'll have a
Yeah,
short interlude here. How is everybody? Are we all good? Paul, Robin?
Do 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 do
Yeah.
do do do.
Don't know whether he was in the
Um,
web, Zoom or whatever.
I'm not even sure if I'm on the
Typically,
right audio source.
typically when
No,
someone freezes like that when they leave, they're on the web and they've closed it. Right.
okay. Let me try a screen share.
Right. That's interesting. I've got your old view still on my screen. Were you in the web and just closed the window rather than leaving the room properly? Or did it fully crash?
I had to kill the Zoom app
Oh, right.
completely.
Okay. That's good. So what I need to do then is I need to remove the spotlight from that Tom, and I need to give the spotlight to that Tom.
Yeah,
Um,
still not convinced that
no,
works.
no, it just says has
Ah,
started screen
ah,
sharing. There we go. Now we're back into your presentation. Will we
okay.
just skip the slicer demo?
Yeah,
Okay, no worries.
yeah,
Right, so that's you. You're not in full, but I can see it still.
yeah. I can sort that one there.
There we go. Cool. Right,
Okay.
I'll review
Ah,
that.
well, that filled the time that the demo was going to take without, doing the demo. So that's fun. Um, I can either sort a video out for that later or just look on YouTube. There's a million ways of videos about how to use a slicer. Right, so that done. Moving on. Um, Filament types. So if you've got your model, you've designed your model, and you want to print it, you need to decide what you want to print it in. What material do you want to use? There are some standards, there are some newer standards, and there are some, we'll term them slightly odd and exotic variants of what you want to do. So the standard filament that most people will use is PLA, polylactic acid. Um, it's technically a cornstarch treatment rather than an oil-based plastic, but they claim it's biodegradable. I'm not convinced about that. I have prints that are 10 and 10 years old at this point, and they certainly show no signs of doing that. But it's cheap. It's got some pretty nice features. It's relatively rigid. It's if you print it with certain settings, it's pretty strong. It's quite brittle. It doesn't flex very well, so it's quite easy to snap. One of the main problems with it is its glass thermal temperature is between 50 and 60 Celsius, which means don't put it or leave it in a car in summer. Even in the UK, it will melt. So yeah, there's things you should look at when you're choosing the filaments. PETG is also pretty common. It's also pretty cheap. If you get the right deals in the right place, by cheap I mean less than £10 per kilo. Here, if you get it really good and you're buying 10 rolls or so more at a time, you can get less than $10 per kilo. You can get them in a range of colors. PETG is a little bit harder to print. Most modern printers will print it pretty well, but it's a bit more flexible. It's got a slightly higher temperature for the car problem, and it's generally considered to be a bit tougher. I'm not a material scientist. Apologies if I've just got the terms in the wrong way around, but yeah, so my basics go, if it's just something like a thing to sit on my desk, it's done in PLA. If I kind of care about its structural strength, I would used to use PETG. I now use something else, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Then we're into things that need specific printer features. TPU, I don't know what that stands for, but it's a flexible filament. You can buy it in different grades of flex, anything from sort of squishy, like you can literally take a print and squish it in your hand like a stress ball, up to harder TPUs that are really quite strong in a sort of vibrational environment because they have a bit of flex in them. My classic for those is like bicycle head torch mounts. The PLA and PETG are a bit too rigid, so they tend to just crack with the vibrations. That needs a direct drive printer, ideally to print. It can be done with the other styles, but you're pushing it, to be quite honest. Direct drive means that the motor that extrudes the plastic is actually right above the nozzle where it comes out. The problem with TPU being flexible, it's also slightly stretchy. So it needs to push. There can't be too much of a gap while it's pushing the filament through the hot nozzle. And then other specific printer features that you might need: abrasive filaments, anything that's got carbon fiber or glass fiber mixed into it, or particularly glow in the dark filament. You need a hardened nozzle, hardened steel nozzle, or a diamond nozzle, or there's ruby nozzles. You need something that is specifically hardened because that will abrade the tip of the nozzle very quickly, particularly glow in the dark because it's got glass ground into the filament. It will wreck normal brass nozzles. Then moving up the scale, the much stronger, more durable filaments, ABS, ASA. I don't know what they stand for. I know they both have styrene in, but we'll talk about that in a minute. They are ABS is your pretty much standard injection molded plastic, and it's a really nice material. Other than it warps as it cools, it shrinks slightly, and because of the layers of the 3D print, it can actually, as they shrink, they can actually just warp the model. And it's pretty common, particularly with ABS, for you start printing, it gets about this far up the thing, and the corners of the model actually warp upwards, and the whole thing just rips itself off the bed. More recently, printers they've been around for years, but more recently you've been able to purchase printers that come with chamber heaters, which are literally they're enclosed boxes, and they have heaters in the chamber to bring the whole chamber up to a temperature to avoid the warping problem. That has pretty much solved the problem, but it was patented until a couple of years ago, so it's a relatively new feature in sort of commercial hobby printers. You can retrofit it to existing ones, or you can enclose the printer and put insulation around it. Do be careful things don't catch on fire. You're dealing with things at 300 degrees Celsius. And then exotic filaments. You can pay anything from $10 a roll to $10,000 a roll, or a roll is a kilo, depending on what your filament is and what its history is and what its requirements are. Generally, as I say, I'm paying £10 to £15 for PLA and PETG, ABS, ASA, £20 a roll for a kilo roll. I have a couple of 500-gram rolls of PET-CF for printing a telescope currently. That is extremely stiff, but it was the £40 for 500 grams. It's not cheap. It produces beautiful parts, but it's yeah, I'm not in a hurry to buy any more of that. Generally, PLL, PETG will do most things you want. TPU is nice for those flexibilities. And if you've got a printer that can do ABS or ASA, great. No, it does work really, really nicely. And yeah, the picture is a Nino TNC strapped to the top of a G90. The Nino case was printed and the stand for the G90s, so printed. Yeah, safety warnings. We should talk about this if we're going to do 3D printing. ABS ASA contains styrene. It's toxic. It stinks, as well as being actually quite toxic to breathe. Print them in a safe environment with vents. Some of the newer printers have extraction fans with activated charcoal filters and things, and they claim they're safe. That's fine as long as you remember to change the filter. Be careful. Things get hot. I mean, we're talking up to 300, 350 Celsius. I've burnt myself on my printers quite a few times by, great, my print's finished, I'll get it off the bed. I pull it off the bed and scrape my hand along the bottom of the nozzle at the same time. That hurts. Don't do that. And things can move unexpectedly. Like, we're talking things that are moving 200-300 millimeters per second. If they don't put your hand in a moving printer, obviously, but also just be aware that, like, even particularly one of my printers, as it finishes, it sits for a little while and then moves the bed to tell me it's finished. And there's been a couple of times I've forgotten or been in a hurry and tried to get something off, and then everything started moving while I've had my hands in it. Yeah, they've got a fair amount of force to them. They will hurt. Yeah, and the picture is the mess I made of installing my solar panels on my van roof. I printed some little brackets for them and Sikaflex them down. It somehow that has stayed on for 2 years. But yeah, read your safety instructions, read your data sheets, read your spec sheets. Be careful, particularly some of the more exotic filaments. It's harder to find information about online. Yeah. Some people, PLA is generally considered to be safe. Obviously, you are still producing melted plastic. The long-term effects of PLA ingestion over time aren't known yet. Microplastics are a severe problem. Yeah, be careful. But we're all radio enthusiasts here, and this is a talk about 3D printing for radio. So what do we do about that? RF and filaments. There's not a lot of public information. There are some white papers, there are some studies. There's not a huge amount. Generally consider it, like, certainly PLA, ABS, ASA, you can consider them to be generally RF transparent-ish up to a certain degree. Obviously, if you stick a radio in a 3-meter thick plastic box, it might have a problem, but generally you're okay. Mixed material filaments probably aren't, and by that I mean any of the glass fiber and the carbon fiber, particularly filaments. They probably aren't RF transparent, and carbon fiber, some of the prints, some of the filaments, depending on how you've printed them and things like that, some of them are conductive or have been known to be conductive. So be careful with, if you're doing it. The carbon fiber filaments are very popular at the minute because of their properties. They're much stronger. But yeah, carbon fiber can be conductive, so be careful with that. And strangely, this one was a novelty to me when I was writing this talk. You can get RF specific filaments with known dielectric values, and people are printing antennas. I really want to print a 70 centimeters dipole at some point, and I will probably do it. And then conductive filaments exist, so filaments with either metallic powder ground into them or some other conductive filaments that are designed to be conductive rather than the carbon fiber ones, which might be. And they count as exotic when you're printing them. Be careful with your printers. Again, they can be abrasive. But there's some interesting work going on in 3D printed antennas at the hobby grade, at the commercial grade. They've been a thing for the past decade or so. There's some interesting research going on, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing what can happen there. I have experimented with copper-filled PLA, but didn't really get anywhere. But I'll carry on experimenting. And yeah, in terms of appropriateness of 3D printing for radio, that's a little cable holder that just like double-sided tapes to things. It's actually surprisingly useful. I have quite a few of them lying around here somewhere. Yeah. So moving on, 3D printers. What should you look for if you're looking to buy a 3D printer? What should you look for if you're looking to upgrade your 3D printer? You bought one a while ago and you want to see what's available now. It's I'm glad I remembered to change this. I wrote this in 2024, but I did remember to change the year. Printers have improved significantly in the last 5 years. It is absolutely worth looking at what the state of the art is. For a minimum, for what I would consider now, definitely a heated bed. Like non-heated beds, no, just don't do it unless you have a specific need for that. Flex plates on the bed mean that they're basically magnetic sheets that stick to the bed. So when your print's finished, you can take the whole sheet off and they just literally just flex in half, spring steel, and pop the print off much nicer. Direct drive, like I mentioned, for printing TPU and other sort of slightly odd filaments where the extruder sits above the nozzle. Bowden fed or Bowden fed printers still exist, which is where the extruder motor is it's sort of attached to the frame of the printer, and there's a long tube. They still exist. They still have their niches, but generally most things are direct drive now. A hot end that goes up to 300 degrees Celsius easily. That used to be considered quite rare and quite a big thing. That is pretty much bog standard now. Core XY design, which is a specific architecture, a 3D printer where the generally the difference is that in a Core XY design, the head moves X and Y and the bed moves in Z, so up and down. An older style or I can't remember what they're called now, but the other common style is that the bed moves backwards and forwards and the head moves up and down. XY is generally, there's been a lot more research and a lot more advance in the last 5 years for XY. It's generally faster and it's slightly less prone to vibration, and it means that the print isn't wobbling backwards and forwards while you're printing, so you can get faster speeds out of it without ripping the thing off the bed. And Core XY is also easier to build an enclosure around, so most of the ones you see in boxes now are Core XY or similar designs. And the software that the printer runs, Clipper is the general open source one. Depending on what you buy, they come with their own firmwares. If you see a printer that says it runs Clipper, it's generally a reasonable indicator that they've paid some attention to it. Not always, but yeah, it's just words to look for. Other things I'll say, controversially, don't buy an Ender 3. It's 2026. They're an old design. Don't buy one. If you get given one, or you can pick one up for, I don't know, £10, sure. But and you can do a lot with an Ender 3 design, but they are 5, 6, if not older now, years old. There's better things available. They're still sold. And yeah, that's a balloon tracking cyber deck that I built to go chasing high altitude balloons. Yeah, that's PETG printed. Yeah, there are a lot of reviews, a lot of availability on YouTube, on other places for printer reviews, with the proviso, obviously, that like a lot of people get them for free or get paid to review them. So yeah, it's the internet in 2026. Maybe don't trust it entirely. Quickly go through these. Thanks, Adam. I've just seen on the chat. Yeah, Cartesian printers is the other form. Brands to look for. Bamboo Labs. They are semi-controversial. They certainly have all the parts in place. They are closed source and have all the parts in place to start enforcing that you can only buy their filaments and things like that. They have not done that yet. They have made some steps towards that, and are starting to lock down their printers a little bit more than they used to be. But they, in terms of, I want to buy a printer and I want it to just work, they're probably your best bet. They have a price range going from £150 to, well, 3,000, depending on which ones you buy. But they are generally, you can unbox them, plug them in, and they work. Their support is pretty good. Prusa is your main alternative if you want a more sort of open, more engineering-led organization. They make some pretty good printers. They make some very strange printers. And the Prusa XL is 350 millimeters cubed, which is big, and is multi-head, so it's got 4 or 5 heads, so it can print 4 or 5 materials in one go. They're really quite nice. I used to have one. Elegoo, Creality, Quiddy, I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure. They do pretty good Chinese, Taiwanese designed printers. They have a decent price range. They generally are okay. They definitely ship, but I will say that their QA might not be as good as it could be. And they are, I don't know how to say this. 4 or 5 years ago, certainly Elegoo and Creality would have been the defaults. Bamboo and Prusa are better now. But Elegoo, Creality, etc. are cheaper. So make your choices. If you're a beginner or new, avoid Vorons. They are kit printers. They are designed that then companies make kits for. If you really want to go in the deep end very quickly, buy a Voron. If you don't want anything to do with that, don't. You can. They are lovely because they're a full open design. You can customize them all you want. They are lovely for that sort of things. But yeah, Voron and kit printers, if you're a beginner, don't do it unless you really want to. Large format printers, I mentioned the Prusa XL. They're great because you can print big parts in one go, but they come with their own problems. They're not as rigid. There's a bunch of engineering challenges around that. And try not to buy your printer on AliExpress. Try to buy something from somewhere that's got a bit of support. You absolutely can buy printers on AliExpress and you can get some good things for less money, but support matters for things like this. Yeah, the Voron designs are great, but yeah, maybe not for your first one. Where's my arrows gone? There we go. Right, nearly done. Accessories that you might want to consider if you're buying a printer. A filament dryer. So most of the plastics and the filaments that we use absorb water over time in the sort of on the roll. That makes them a bit brittle, makes them a bit fragile. It can make them very awkward to print. You can sometimes hear the water boiling out of it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us live in the UK. If not, well, I certainly do. The humidity level is quite high here, particularly my printers live in the garage. So a filament dryer is basically a dehumidifier in a box. You can use a dehumidifier for it. Just basically bake some of the water and absorb some of the water out of it, particularly if the filament's been stood in the garage for a while. 3D lac, it's basically unscented hairspray. You can spray it on a printer bed and it helps things stick if you've got either slightly odd filament or you've got adhesion problems and it keeps coming loose. A plastic razor or scraper. If you've 3D lacked the thing to the bed and the thing has stuck to the bed, how do you get the thing off the bed afterwards? Yeah, plastic scraper. Hardened nozzles, I would come if you buy a printer without a hardened nozzle, that's fine, but they're pretty much a immediate upgrade for me. The thermal properties change a bit, but yeah, for me at least, it makes sense. Tweezers, you will be forever picking bits of filament out of things. Isopropyl alcohol is an absolute requirement if you're doing resin printing, but if you're not, it can be useful for like cleaning the bed, getting grease off it if you put your hands on it or whatever. It's generally the things that I have around. A pair of wire cutters is useful just to cut filament because scissors can be a bit awkward. Yeah. And pretty much done. So finding out more. 3D Printing Nerd is good on YouTube. He's a bit enthusiastic about things, but generally has good information for certainly for beginners or people sort of looking to get into it or got a 3D printer and wanting to do a bit more with it. All3dp.com I used to recommend quite strongly. They've gone quite heavily on the AI articles right now. They're not that great anymore, but they used certainly there's a whole bunch of information on there, particularly for sort of reviewing one printer against another when they'll just give you the specs table and things like that. There are many discords about 3D printing, many discords about 3D printing. And yeah, just experimentation and play, print things in different settings with different wall thicknesses, different infills, which I'm aware I've not talked about, but just play and see what you can do, and print things in different orientations and try and work out like which ways are stronger and things like that. It's cheap, and it only costs you time really. And yeah, I've just seen in the chat, Paul has just said, have a look at Gridfinity. My life runs on Gridfinity. Just as an example of kind of what it is. Having said that, oh yeah, there we go. It's basically a standard for storage boxes. Little squares of certain altitude, certain heights, and you can get boxes. People have done specific prints that hold different tools. In fact, I've got one up here that holds my ESP debugger. Yeah, Gridfinity, definitely absolutely worth a look. And if you've got a 3D printer and you're not sure what to print about it, print some Gridfinity. Yeah, you'll be there forever. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Yeah, thanks Adam mentioning CNC Kitchen again on YouTube. Does a lot of informational videos and does a whole bunch of testing and experimentation of how to do good prints, what happens if you use this setting versus that setting, that sort of thing. And has a good range of tools actually. The 3D the heated insert ends he has a great. So yeah. One last thing. Desktop Machine Shop. If you're looking for a Voron kit, having said I you shouldn't buy one. They very kind. Dave at Desktop Machine Shop very kindly donated me a printer. So I said I'd put his slide on here. But if you're looking for a Voron kit, go buy one from there. They're a UK import. And I'm done.
Thanks very much, Tom. That was fantastic and a nice intro for people who haven't done this kind of thing before. Um, I'm not sure if anybody on the call right now is a newcomer to 3D printing. If you are and you have questions, I'll prioritize you first. I suspect everybody in the call maybe has some kind of experience with it, but if anyone who wants to unmute and ask a question, fire away, or you can bang one in the chat as well, and I'll read it out if you want to remain anonymous. I will start off by I'm somebody who bought an Ender 3. I've got a V2 Neo. I forget which way round the numbers go. I've done a few things, I've printed a few antenna mounts and I've done a few, bits and pieces. Starting to kind of think now, have I bought an expensive thing which takes up half the desk? What's next for me? Do 3D printers, even the old ones, still keep their value? I mean, has the price come down enough for me to not worry about that kind of thing? Or, for anyone who's kind of new into it and worried about starting.
Yeah, most printers don't. The second-hand retail of printers is not great, or the second-hand value of printers is not great unless you're trying to sell one of the current generation ones. Um, Ender 3s and that sort of era. You can buy them all day, every day on Facebook Marketplace
Mm.
for not a lot of money, unfortunately. They are still capable. But sort of again from a beginner's perspective, most people who are happy with their Ender 3 have done a bunch of modifications to it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
which again in 2026 I can't necessarily recommend for a beginner to start
Mm.
there. You will learn, but if you want to buy something because you want to print some new knobs for your 991A or whatever, you might get frustrated very quickly with the amount of work that you have to do to the printer to get it reliable.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to learn about 3D printing, then yeah, they're cheap and there's mods and
Mm.
write-ups and guides and parts and things you can buy or make or print, use it to print its own upgrades. Yeah, my recommendation generally now is a lot depends on your budget and
Yeah.
a lot obviously if you're looking for an upgrade, then you might have a better idea of what you're looking for. I would say, yeah, Bamboo Labs or Prusa are a good place to start with trying to look for what what you're likely to print. For me, it tends to be big parts, so I'm more
Sure. So you're looking for that size and,
yeah.
that kind
Hence
of
why
thing.
I had an XL for a while, and I currently have the
Yeah.
big Bamboo. Other people want pure speed, so they tend to get the
Hmm.
speed just because they're faster. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
If they're going at volume, particularly, I would imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
or
That kind of
your
thing.
like one of my contracts they do basically rapid prototyping before they have the part CNC'd, so it's worth
Yeah.
miles for them to get the part out in the hour that somebody's at work so that they can iterate it faster before they go and
Yeah.
get it CNC'd.
Yeah. Absolutely. Does anybody in the call have any questions for Tom at all? Feel free, or anything you think I should ask on behalf of a beginner at all. That would be good. Um, I'm gonna ask we'll call this an emergency question like Richard Herring would. That's a good idea. What's the weirdest thing you've printed or designed, do you think, while you've been doing this?
Uh, depends on what you consider weird, really. So that is Rumi's sword from K-pop Demon Hunters. that has a set of LEDs running behind it and is linked to my paging system for work because I'm a sysadmin. So if we get alerted, it goes red and starts
Excellent.
flashing. People consider that a bit weird. Up here, uh, um, various examples. If anyone happened to go to Hamfest last year, that is 1/8 of the moon in the early
That's incredible
2000s.
detail.
Yeah, NASA radar scanned the moon and released the data, and
I see.
you can print them as lamps. Um, so I have one. I have the smaller print of this with a smart bulb in it, specifically so I can tell Siri to turn off the moon at night. Uh,
We have
and then,
Paul in the chat here who said he's printed the world's smallest violin with a zero point
oh,
0.2
that's brilliant.
millimeter head, which is
Yeah,
fantastic.
I might have to do it. And then, um, yeah, I mean, depending on your audience, that's a Mark V Iron Man helmet. Well, the face mask from that I'm gradually mechanizing. Yeah,
Sort of a fair amount of stuff.
yeah. I mean, just behind me.
We are rapidly approaching pub time. So if there a 4 foot scale model of a Falcon 9 from
Oh,
Adam there in the chat, that sounds
nice.
fantastic. There we go. I should embark on a large project. I'm about to print a holder for the Scrub Daddy sponges that you can get, the ones with the faces on. And basically, all it is a holder, and it's got a little tube comes out, looks like a little willy, drains all the water out.
I have seen them that have little legs, so they can sit
Oh,
on
and they hang
themselves.
over the
But no,
side of the bath.
but
Yeah,
no, yeah,
and
sure,
this big, sorry. Oh, lovely stuff. Tom, thank you very much
no
for your
problem.
time this evening and for giving that talk for all of us OARC members. There will be another talk the first Saturday of March, which is the 7th of March. Derek Cazal, Mike Whiskey Zero Lima November Alpha will be giving a talk entitled Beyond SWR, a hands-on introduction to VNA's impedance and TDR, which I think is the measuring cable lengths and things like that, isn't it? With by sending pulses. So that sounds fantastic. And thank you everyone who come this evening, and thank you once again to Tom, and goodbye everyone who's watching.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.